Hello, everybody. We're going to tie a Spanish-inspired fly. In Spanish, it's called the Mosca Ahogada, which is drowned fly, in other words, a wet fly. This is from the region of Leon. There's a famous manuscript there that uses Gallo de Leon. Here's a great shop I visited a few years ago when I was in Leon City. J.M. Senador Jose Manuel. Here he is inspecting some Gallo de Leon. In this local area, this is the feathers of choice. Beautiful feathers. Here are some rivers in Leon, a little river map. Here are some modern renditions of flies that Jose Manuel tied using Gallo de Leon. A lot of people call it Coq de Leon, but it's really from Leon. Here's my attempt at a traditional fly, dating back to the old days. And here's another closer look of a silk body with a very steep cone. You have a fan shape for the wing in the front. So here we are. We're going to go and attempt to tie this fly. I'm going to use a dry fly hook, size 12. And I'm going to use, for the body, silk. This is 54 Dean Street, Ovale. It's a silk floss. So I wet it a little bit with some saliva, and I'm tying it on. And I'm trying to make this big bump here, which is going to help later when we tie in the Gallo de Leon feather fibers. It's going to help them stand up and give us a backstop, if you will, to push the feathers up against that bump to flare out. It's not the easiest thing to do. This is probably about my third or fourth fly, and it still kind of sucks. It requires a little bit of practice. Silk is obviously slippery, and it wants to rotate around the hook. I think when I do it in the future, I'm going to put a little super glue down in the beginning to kind of hold everything together. In the old days, the hooks they had more of a square shape, a flat side to them. Now the hooks are round. There's a couple of great YouTube channels of traditional tiers who put a little mono snell on there, and that bump with the mono in there helps create that bump and stop it from spinning. This is just Parasol's gossamer in like a soft yellow, just a strand. I'm tying. That's going to be the rib. So I'm wrapping that back and tying that on. And then for the tail fibers, it's obviously Gallo de Leon. And this is a light speckled ginger. Each of the different classifications of these feathers have cool names in Spanish. To be honest, I can't remember them all. But really interesting fly. I'm just pulling off some fibers now. Seems to be the going trend of like current people tying these things to be pretty sparse with that. So I'm just I did a little pinch wrap there. Most people roll it on. I have not felt secure doing that. So there are just a couple fibers in there, maybe 4 or 5. And then I'm just going to trim off the butt ends here. And then continue working on this steep ramp, this very steep cone-shaped body with the silk, trying to keep it together, keep it fairly flat to make that bump there abrupt. I guess is the key word. Abrupt and steep. and it's hard to do. It you know this was like the fourth or fifth one I did, and I made the bump even bigger every single time. It's bigger than I think it's bigger than you think it is. The variation here in the color of the silk that you're seeing is just whether it's wet or dry. As I put some saliva on it, my hands are. You can see some of the silk frayed there. My hands are not in the greatest of manicured shape at this point to work with this, and not so good with gloves. So I just went with it. I'm an amateur. B, it's only the fifth one I've done, so it's definitely not going to be perfect. But the idea was to give it a go and show you guys. I was reintroduced to these concepts by a Facebook group I'm on, and a gentleman by the name of Jim Epp brought up the manuscript, which started myself and a friend, Jonathan, down this path of looking into it and finding YouTube channels and information. Jonathan, fortunately, is fluent in Spanish, helped me translate some of the things. I mean, Google Translate works great, but it gives you very direct translations. It's hard to sort of figure out really, the actual context of it rather than the direct translation. So I'm not using a bobbin here, so I did a hand half hitch there to tie off the floss. Now I'm winding up the gossamer, parasol gossamer, to make a rib. And I'll put some links in the description to some of the amazing sites we found. I'll put a link to a book in Spanish about the Gallo de Leon and the flies of the El Escrito de Astorga, the Astorga manuscript, which is not the oldest, but is a fairly old manuscript of flies. And so I brought that rib up and did a half hitch to tie it off. And I did that before cutting the silk, because I've had, even with the half hitch, the silk sort of come undone. It felt to me to be a little more secure to double tie it off with the thinner gossamer. So I took an entire side of a Gallo de Leon feather, cut it off, and put it in a hair stacker. And that's all those fibers. And I just did a pinch wrap, and I'm kind of securing it on there, tight, but not super tight. And then pushing with my fingernail and sort of rotating a little bit away from me, but mostly towards me, because thread torque's gonna, as I tighten and move towards that abrupt end to the cone, is going to kind of pull some of those fibers to the far side of the hook. I'm just putting a half hitch in here because I don't want to lose where I am while I cut these fibers. Since I'm going to actually fish this fly and use the eye of the hook, I like the down eye. Helps here cut away the butt ends a little bit better and still get access to the eye of the hook with this tying method. If you're going to do the Snell thing, and I'll put some links to some of those flies, it probably doesn't matter as much. So here now, another thing I saw is to get a wrap behind all those feathers. Helps prop them up also, and really, wedge them in there against that cliff, if you will. And the feathers are even with some pretty strong wraps. The feathers are pretty capable of moving and spinning here still, so you can do a lot of adjustments until you glue it, basically. So you see I'm still tweaking it a little bit, pushing it, try to get them a little bit more around the ramp. It's super hard to get that ramp or cliff to be just right. So you can sort of see here from the side, some of the side fibers are not sticking up as much as the ones in the middle. So now I'm doing a little like loose half hitch, but I'm gonna pull it tight behind the feathers to lock in that behind and up. And still tweaking. You gotta tweak. Gotta make it look pretty. Fish don't care, but we do, right? And that's the whole point of this. Just trying to get that fan to be, 180 degrees, if not a little bit more than 180 degrees. A couple fibers a little bit below the equator, if you will, is not necessarily a bad thing. I think that's considered good. And that's just checking it out. And then I'm gonna I'm gonna just kind of clean up that head area a little bit, make a head. I don't know that traditionally they really worried about that, but I'm doing it, and gonna do a series of half hitches to kind of tie it off and then glue it up. These flies are, again, they're ahogada, or drowned in Spanish. Basically, they're wet flies. So even though I use the dry fly hook, a light hook, I do this actually a lot. Even for, North Country spiders, use a light wired hook, dry fly hook, and I'm still fishing it, in the 6 inches, 6 to 12 inches, depending on the type of stream you're fishing. These are Leon is fast water mountain streams, with some plunges. So you could cast this into some rough water and get it down, no problem. And the use of the Gallo de Leon, it's not tied in, short. So its stiffness, is just helps to keep it animated and the fly moving in the faster water. Almost like some of the stiff-hackled tenkara flies, where the hackle's tied a little bit longer. The idea not to really like give it buoyancy to like float on top. Particularly here, it's more like a wing on top. A little 360 here. I adjusted a little bit so you could see the tail. Here's a little behind to kind of see how that fan panned out. And thank you.